It started with a phone call, one that would unravel a neighborhood's secrets and expose truths no one saw coming. When Karen dialed 911, her voice trembling with accusations against a black woman and her young daughter, she thought she was protecting her community. But what unfolded in the hours and days that followed revealed a story far more complex than anyone could have imagined. A story that would leave an entire town questioning their assumptions and confronting uncomfortable realities. On a warm Saturday morning in June, in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio, the air was filled with the usual sounds of summer: children laughing, lawnmowers humming, and birds chirping in the trees. Among the neatly trimmed lawns and pastel-colored houses, Aisha Thompson, a 34-year-old nurse practitioner, was spending the day with her 8-year-old daughter, Maya. Aisha had lived in the neighborhood for 3 years, a single mother who had worked tirelessly to provide a stable home for her daughter. She was well-liked by most of her neighbors, known for her warm smile and willingness to lend a hand. Maya, a bright and curious girl, was often seen riding her bike or playing in the community park, her laughter a familiar sound to those nearby. That morning, Aisha and Maya decided to set up a small lemonade stand in front of their house. It was Maya's idea, inspired by a book she'd read about a girl who raised money for charity. Aisha thought it was a sweet way for Maya to spend the day, and she helped her daughter mix the lemonade, set up a folding table, and create a colorful sign that read, "Maya's Lemonade Stand, $1 a cup." They placed the table at the edge of their driveway, just beyond the sidewalk, and Maya sat proudly behind it, ready to greet customers. Across the street, Karen Mitchell, a 52-year-old retiree, watched from her living room window. Karen had lived in the neighborhood for over a decade and prided herself on keeping things in order. She was the kind of person who noticed every detail, who parked where whose grass was too long, whose dog barked too loudly. To Karen, the neighborhood was her domain, and she felt a responsibility to maintain its standards. When she saw Aisha and Maya setting up the lemonade stand, something about it didn't sit right with her. The table was too close to the sidewalk, she thought. It could be a hazard. And why were they doing this anyway? Was it even legal to sell lemonade without a permit? Karen's unease grew as she watched a few neighbors stop by the stand, chatting with Aisha and buying cups of lemonade for their kids. To Karen, it looked suspicious. She didn't know Aisha well, only enough to exchange polite waves, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was the way Aisha seemed so comfortable, so confident, in a neighborhood Karen still thought of as hers. Or maybe it was the fact that Aisha and Maya were black in a predominantly white suburb, a detail Karen would never admit influenced her thoughts, but one that lingered in the back of her mind. By noon, Karen had made up her mind. She picked up her phone and dialed 911. "Hello. Yes, I'd like to report an issue," she said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "There's a woman and her child running some kind of unauthorized stand in front of their house. It's blocking the sidewalk, and I'm concerned it's not safe. I don't know what they're doing, but it doesn't look right. Can you send someone to check it out?" The dispatcher, accustomed to calls like this, asked a few clarifying questions. "Is anyone causing a disturbance? Are they threatening anyone?" Karen hesitated. "No, not exactly," she admitted. "But it's not normal. They're out there selling something, and I don't think they have a permit. It could be dangerous." The dispatcher assured her an officer would be sent to investigate and ended the call. Karen felt a sense of relief. She'd done her part to keep the neighborhood safe. Within 20 minutes, a police cruiser pulled up in front of Aisha's house. 2 officers, both white men in their 30s, stepped out and approached the lemonade stand. Aisha, who had been helping Maya pour a cup for a neighbor's child, looked up, surprised. Maya froze, clutching a plastic pitcher, her eyes wide as the officers walked toward them. "Good afternoon, ma'am," one of the officers, Officer Daniels, said. "We received a call about a potential issue with this stand. Can you tell us what's going on here?" His tone was polite but firm, his hand resting casually on his belt. Aisha's heart sank. She'd dealt with situations like this before, moments where she felt singled out, scrutinized for no clear reason. But she kept her composure, knowing Maya was watching. "This is just my daughter's lemonade stand," she said calmly. She wanted to raise some money for a charity she read about. "We're not causing any trouble." Officer Daniels nodded, glancing at the table, the sign, and the small stack of dollar bills in a plastic cup. "Do you have a permit for this?" he asked. Aisha blinked, caught off guard. "A permit? It's just a kid's lemonade stand. I didn't think we needed one." The second officer, Officer Reed, chimed in. "Well, technically, any kind of vending requires a permit in this town. It's a minor thing, but we got a call, so we have to check it out." Across the street, Karen watched from her window, her arms crossed. She felt validated seeing the police respond so quickly. But as she observed Aisha talking to the officers, a small crowd began to gather. Neighbors, curious about the police presence, stepped out onto their porches or walked over to see what was happening. Some recognized Aisha and waved, confused by the scene. Others whispered to each other, speculating about what had prompted the call. Maya tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom, are we in trouble?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Aisha knelt down, forcing a smile. "No, sweetie, we're not in trouble. The officers are just making sure everything's okay." But inside, Aisha was furious. She knew this wasn't about a permit. She'd seen other kids in the neighborhood set up lemonade stands before, and no one had ever called the police. This felt personal, targeted, and she had a sinking feeling about who might be behind it. As the officers continued their questions, Aisha's neighbor, Mrs. Carter, a retired teacher in her 60s, approached. "What's going on here?" she asked, her tone sharp. "This is Aisha and Maya. They're just selling lemonade. Why are the police involved?" Officer Daniels explained they were responding to a complaint about an unauthorized stand. Mrs. Carter's eyes narrowed. "A complaint? From who? This is ridiculous. Maya's a child, and Aisha's one of the kindest people in this neighborhood." The situation was starting to draw more attention. A few neighbors pulled out their phones, recording the interaction. Aisha felt a mix of embarrassment and frustration. She didn't want this to become a spectacle, especially not for Maya. "Officers, we'll pack up the stand," she said, her voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside. "We didn't mean to cause any problems." Officer Reed shook his head. "No need to do that just yet, ma'am. We're just following up on the call. If you don't have a permit, we'll need to ask you to stop, but it's not a big deal." His tone was softer now, sensing the growing tension from the onlookers. But before Aisha could respond, another neighbor, Jamal, a local business owner, stepped forward.
"Hold on," he said.
"I've lived here for years, and I've seen plenty of kids set up stands like this. No one's ever needed a permit. Why is this a problem now?" The officers exchanged a glance, clearly uncomfortable with the growing crowd. Officer Daniels tried to defuse the situation. "We're not trying to make this a big deal. We just need to make sure everything's in order." But the neighbors weren't satisfied. Mrs. Carter spoke up again. "This is about someone making a fuss over nothing."
"Who called you?"
Was it Karen Mitchell? She gestured toward Karen's house, where the curtains had suddenly closed. Karen, still watching from behind her window, felt her stomach twist. She hadn't expected the situation to escalate like this. She thought the police would quietly handle it, maybe give Aisha a warning and move on. But now, with neighbors gathering and pointing fingers, she felt exposed. She told herself she'd done nothing wrong, she was just being cautious. But the whispers from the crowd told a different story. By now, the story was spreading beyond the neighborhood. One of the videos recorded by a neighbor was uploaded to social media, captioned, "Cops called on a black woman and her kid for a lemonade stand. This is ridiculous." The post gained traction quickly, shared by local activists and community groups. Within hours, it had thousands of views, with comments pouring in, some condemning the police, others speculating about who had made the call. Aisha, unaware of the online storm, focused on keeping Maya calm. She packed up the lemonade stand, thanking the neighbors for their support. "We're fine," she told them, though her voice was tight. "We'll just head inside." Maya was quiet, her earlier excitement replaced by confusion. "Why did they come, Mom?" she asked as they walked into the house. Aisha didn't know how to answer. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that someone saw her lemonade stand as a threat? That evening, Aisha sat down with her phone and saw the viral video. Her heart sank as she read the comments, some supportive, others ugly and racist. She didn't want this kind of attention, but it was too late. The story was out there and people were demanding answers. Who had called the police? Why had they targeted Aisha and Maya? Local news outlets picked up the story, and by the next morning, reporters were knocking on Aisha's door, asking for her side of the story. Aisha declined to speak to the media. She didn't want to turn this into a bigger ordeal, especially for Maya's sake. But the pressure was mounting. Community activists organized a small rally outside the neighborhood, calling for accountability. They demanded to know who had made the 911 call and why the police had responded so quickly to something so trivial. The police department issued a statement saying they were reviewing the incident and that officers had followed protocol. But that did little to quell the growing outrage. Behind closed doors, Karen was panicking. She hadn't expected her call to blow up like this. She turned off her phone after seeing the social media posts, some of which mentioned her by name. Neighbors had started to piece things together, remembering Karen's history of complaints about loud music, parked cars, even Halloween decorations she deemed too flashy. She told herself she wasn't racist, that she'd have called about anyone's lemonade stand. But deep down, she knew that wasn't entirely true. She'd never called the police on the white kids who'd set up similar stands in years past. As the days passed, the story took an unexpected turn. A local journalist, digging into the incident, discovered that Karen had made multiple 911 calls over the years, several of which involved Black or Hispanic residents. The calls ranged from complaints about suspicious cars to loud gatherings that turned out to be family barbecues. The pattern was undeniable, and when the journalist published an article detailing Karen's history, the backlash was swift. Protesters gathered outside her house, holding signs that read, "Stop weaponizing 911," and "Justice for Aisha and Maya." Karen, overwhelmed by the attention, issued a public apology through a local news station. "I didn't mean to cause harm," she said, her voice shaking. "I was just concerned about the rules. I'm not a racist. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood safe." But her words rang hollow to many. The evidence of her past calls suggested a pattern of bias, conscious or not, and the community wasn't ready to forgive so easily. For Aisha, the focus wasn't on Karen's apology. She was more concerned about Maya, who had become withdrawn since the incident. Maya didn't want to ride her bike or play outside anymore, afraid the police might come back. Aisha reached out to a therapist to help Maya process what had happened. She also started attending community meetings, where neighbors discussed ways to address racial bias and improve relations with the police. Aisha didn't want to be a figurehead, but she felt a responsibility to speak up, to make sure no other child had to go through what Maya did. The truth that shocked everyone wasn't just about Karen's call or the police response. It was the realization that this incident was a symptom of something deeper, a community grappling with unspoken biases, a system that too often escalated minor issues into confrontations, and a neighborhood forced to confront its own divisions. For Aisha and Maya, it was a painful reminder of the challenges they faced, but it also sparked a resolve to keep pushing forward, to keep building a life in a place that didn't always feel welcoming. As the story faded from the headlines, the neighborhood began to change. Some residents reached out to Aisha, offering support and apologies. Others organized workshops on implicit bias, inviting experts to speak. The police department revised its protocols for responding to non-emergency calls, emphasizing de-escalation and community engagement. And Maya, slowly but surely, started to smile again, setting up her lemonade stand once more, this time with neighbors lining up to buy, not just lemonade, but a chance to show they could do better. The incident left a mark on everyone involved. For Karen, it was a reckoning with her own actions and assumptions. For Aisha and Maya, it was a lesson in resilience. And for the neighborhood, it was a wake-up call, a chance to confront the truth and build something better from it.